Good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of Sounds of the Diaspora, artist to artist, a conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. Man, I don't even know where to begin with this guest tonight. This is someone that I've known. Man, I've known him since 1985 from Rutgers University. We attended Rutgers together. We became very close friends. I've watched his career. He's watched my career evolved, and he's a writer, author, a journalist, a poet, producer, and a director, and a very dear friend of mine. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Kevin Powel to the show.
Dion.
Hey, bro, how you doing?
I love it. You're the host. I get to be the guest. This is awesome.
No, it's normally
the other way around.
Yeah, you're normally doing all of the interviewing, man. Over the years, I've watched your career flourish and all of the projects you've worked on, and the number of books you put out and the people you've helped, and all the great things you've been doing. And when I started this show, I made a list of 100 people that I wanted on the show, and I was going down the list, and you are on the list. Wow. Even though you're not a musician, your voice is a voice of our Afro-Caribbean and American diaspora, and I felt that it would be, fitting to have you on the show so our audience can, check out who you are and follow you. And, I know you have a great following as well, but I just wanted them to know who you are. Being someone there to be. Yeah, man.
Well, I'm honored to be here. It's funny because I have been in love with music since I was a child because of my mother. And, I didn't know I would have a life that would be connected to music because I cannot sing. I cannot rap. If you ask my wife, sometimes I dance off beat, you know what I'm saying? Or clap off beat or whatever it may be. And I don't know how to read scales and I don't play any instruments. But since I was a child, I've had a profound love of music. I've been a listener and an appreciator of music. And I was one of those kids early because I love to read, and which is how I ended up being a writer. I just love reading. I would always read the credits. I was always like, okay, who actually made the record, and as I learned about musicians through the years, what musician played what instrument on these different records. And so it's been in me. And I know it's your show, Dion. You are a living legend. I said that in my social media post about doing the show tonight. It's like when I watched you the other night at Dizzy's here in New York City, and the 21st Century Band, and I've seen y'all many times. We've worked together. We've been in the studio together, as you know. We've worked on records together, all of that. But I felt like I was watching, Duke Ellington's band. I felt like I was watching Count Basie's band. I felt like I was watching Quincy Jones. The way you, as the leader, and the way you all come together, it's just so seamlessly and the rooted in the Afro-Caribbean traditions, but you took us around the world, as you always do with your music. And I just wanted to say that, like, I'm such an appreciator of what you are and what you represent. And so it's my honor to be here because I'm just like, you're one of our great musicians on the planet, period. There's no other way to say it.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for that. And you always come out to the show and support. So I know you're saying that from the heart. I really appreciate that. And I think that's one of the things that make you so special in this industry, because you are one of the founding writers for Vibe magazine, and you've made journalism part of your professional foundation, and music was like one of the main genres that you reported on. And even though you don't play instrument, which I find very interesting, because your love of music, ever since I've known you, we've had so many in-depth conversations about music, and the fact that you do not play an instrument is really interesting, but it just talks about it lends a lot to your love of culture and your deep respect for the arts and being a creative person and being a writer. You can appreciate that, and I think you've become the voice of many, because as you know, as a creative, we do what we do and we don't really get out there and promote ourselves, and you've become the voice for a lot of folks, especially in the hip hop genre and in the pop culture media. But behind the scenes, I know there's a whole, because the projects we've worked on weren't all hip hop or anything.
No, I know.
It's been very, very grassroots and grounded in Afro-Caribbean music and stuff, and you know, some of the things we've done. So that's why I felt that this was a really good, you know, platform for folks from our Afro-Caribbean platform to check you out as well, because quietly kept, you know, you've been a voice for everyone, not only just the hip hop, you know, the hip hop community, man. But, you know, before we jump into the stuff that you're doing now, you know, tell our audience, I mean, we met at Rutgers University where you know, you studied there. Just take us from there and how you got into journalism and getting into writing for Vibe and stuff like that. You know, take us back to that and bring us up to the current.
You know, it's really it's a wonderful question. So I got to college. I was actually Army ROTC first semester in college. I was not who you see me as now.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I wanted to go to the military. I got a full ride to Rutgers, and so I ended up going to Rutgers because I was born in New Jersey. My mother's from South Carolina, so there was always music in my environment. Growing up with African Americans, West Indians, Puerto Ricans, and later Dominicans as they start to immigrate to the country as well. So I was always hearing different rhythms, even as a child. Yo hablo español, es muy importante. I spoke Spanish. I learned Spanish as a child, listening to the music of Puerto Ricans in my community. You know, obviously salsa, merengue. You know, with the Dominican community with merengue, and so I started bachata. I didn't realize how it was influencing me as a child. You know, all of that. When I got to Rutgers, my two best friends were actually Barbadian, Wesley Best, and Trinidadian, DeVerney Phillips. And we were all 18-year-old kids who literally stumbled into the anti-apartheid movement. Nelson Mandela was still in jail. Jesse Jackson was running for your frat brother, your mega sci-fi frat. Jesse Jackson was running for president. And so all of that had such a profound effect on me. And I was also introduced to the last poets, Still Pulse, and probably most importantly, Bob Marley in that first year of college. You know what I mean? And I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, something we talked about. And Malcolm X's mother was a follower of Marcus Garvey from Jamaica, and she was Grenadian from the West Indies. And you know what I'm saying? And so I was learning simultaneously African-American history and also Caribbean history and diasporic history at the same time at 18, 19 years old. So when I met you, that's what was going through my brain. And you know, it was laying a foundation because I didn't know that I didn't know who Bob Marley was. I didn't know who Still Pulse was. I didn't know who the last poets were, you know, and you know, all these years later, I didn't realize how much Stevie Wonder had impacted me with his sampling of music from all around the world. You know, I was listening to songs in the key of life, but I didn't have an understanding of where everything was coming from and his relationship with Bob Marley and all that kind of stuff. But that was the grounding for it. And I also wrote for our Black Latinx newspaper. It was called The Black Voice Carta Boricua. And it was right there in 18, 19 years old. I knew I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid, but I started writing. I just started writing. And by the time I was 20, I was literally taking the suburban transit bus from Rutgers in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where we went to school, where we met, to New York City. The first newspaper I wrote for was owned by a Trinidadian brother. Man, I mean, so think about it. These are the influences that I'm getting. And, you know, and then, you know, living in the New York, New Jersey area, I mean, 1 out of 2 Black folks have Caribbean roots. You know what I mean? It's real. And it's like all of that had a profound effect on me. I didn't intentionally, I didn't start out wanting to be a writer, you know, of music. I was actually writing about news. I was doing newsy stuff. But by the time we got to the late 80s into the early 90s, I was asked by the writer who's considered the father of hip hop journalism, Harry Allen, who was with Public Enemy, as their hip hop journalist, if I wrote about music. I actually lied and said, yes, I do. So that's how I started writing. I just wanted some money. I needed a check, to be honest with you. But this is important to say, Dion. You asked me about the foundational piece. Amiri Baraka's Blues People. You know, when I read that book, I was like, you know, and then I started, Langston Hughes is my favorite writer, and Langston embraced the blues, you know, in his poetry. And that's when I was like, you know, well, I want to embrace, you know, hip hop and music, and Baraka was jazz. And, you know, when we talk about hip hop is African-American, it's West Indian, it's Latinx. Those three groups came together to create hip hop. You know, I mean, many of the founding fathers of hip hop, Kool Herc, you know, Dougie Fresh, Bambaataa, you know, Grandmaster Flash, they all have Caribbean roots. People don't realize that, you know what I mean? And so, and when Kool Herc came from Jamaica and the West Indies to the Bronx, here's this West Indian brother who's bringing the sound system influence of the Caribbean, of Jamaica to the Bronx, New York. And then he's being influenced by James Brown from Georgia. So that kind of cultural exchange shaped me. And when I got to New York in 1990, after Rutgers, I had a job at the New School as an assistant. I remember a young Roy Hargrove passing through there and all kinds of folks like that. My boss was a brother named Sam Anderson, whose family was from Barbados back in the day, the first wave of immigrants in the 20th century during the Harlem Renaissance. His ancestors came in during the Harlem Renaissance. Sam would play WBGO, Dion. And every time he left the office, I would switch it to the hip hop R&B station. I knew nothing about jazz.
You let me get this old folk music off of here. Let me get with the times. Yeah.
But he kept it. He played it so often. I finally asked him one day, what should I listen to? Now think about it. I went to Rutgers, where you went to school. Rutgers has one of the premier jazz programs in the country. But one of the things that I regret now about my education is that I didn't explore the artistic side of Rutgers. Right. I was so busy with, I was a poli-sci major, I was liberal arts, and I was so busy with protesting, things like that. I missed until after the fact. I was like, wait a minute, Rutgers had a jazz program that was like phenomenal. I knew people like you who had come through the school who were phenomenal musicians, but it didn't connect for me. All these years later, Dion, I can't even imagine not listening to jazz every single day of my life. I mean, my wife and I, it's we listen to BGO, we listen to KCSM out of the Bay Area, K Jazz out of Long Beach. I mean, we listen to international stuff. I mean, jazz became like the foundational piece for me. It educated me in so many ways. And I asked Sam, what should I start with? He said, start with Coltrane and Miles, and that's what I did.
Okay,
that's
heavy to start with.
Yes.
Most people think start with Louis Armstrong and work your way up, but that's jumping like in the
I jumped in.
Pool.
I jumped in.
That's great though, man, because you had so many things happen, and I saw that because we were running to each other on campus, and we would talk a lot. And believe it or not, like you said, you got introduced to Malcolm X. Conversation with you introduced me to the book of Malcolm X, and I read it. I couldn't put it down. I read it like 3 times in 2 weeks, and that was my insight into Black American culture, because growing up in the Caribbean, we didn't have that. We didn't hear the N-word. That didn't exist. The first time I heard that, I was 18 years old in college.
Wow.
So as you were dealing with all of those things culturally, politically, and all of that, I was dealing with the same thing musically, because I didn't have the jazz experience. And living in Livingston, which was the Black college, but going to Douglas for school, which is where Mason Gross was.
That's right.
That commute alone was a cultural experience.
That's right. That's right.
My first time like really being away from home. So I mean, I consider the way Rutgers was set up with the 5 campuses and having to take classes on all campuses. By the time I moved to New York, I was so aware and alert. One of the first things I did moving to New York within the first week was I rode the trains from end to end just to get my geography, like just get that in place.
Yeah.
And I just jump right into things. But through all of this, I remember, your name would pop up in a lot of circles. Oh, you went to Rutgers, Kevin Powell, he's the writer for such and such. And I would see articles that you would put out, and I'm doing my thing. And then we would bump into each other.
Right.
On different things, and you say, "Where are you playing?" And I'll tell you, and I look around, and you're there.
That's right. I mean, because it's I don't think people talk enough about the 1990s. I try not to get stuck in the 90s, but like Dion Parson, Ron Blake, Joshua Redmond, Roy Hargrove, Mark Whitaker. I mean, I remember they were talking about you guys as like the young lions. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all were the next wave of the great jazz musicians, and you became that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's interesting because you talk about like all of the great cats that came out of Rutgers. Terrence Blanchard.
That's right.
Rutgers, the great writer. He's now the artistic director for SF Jazz, but he did all the Spike Lee movies. When I got to Rutgers in fall of '85, Terrence had just graduated. Ralph Peterson, the drummer, had just graduated. Frank Lacey was still going there. Michael Philip Mossman was still going there. But then while I was there, David Sanchez came through there.
That's right.
Adam Cruz came through there. Lafayette Harris came through there. Kenny Davis, the bass player, who's now teaching there, came through there.
Wow.
Orrin Evans, who's now teaching there, he came after me. And then you had like the last three trumpet players that, Kenny Mills was down there, but a couple other guys, but like Sean Jones, the great trumpet, now down there. Terrell Stafford, who's running the jazz program at Temple, studied with Fielder. Lee
Incredible.
Holbrook, who just left. He was the director of Harlem School of the Arts, studied with Philip Mike, Melvin Jones, great trumpet player out here with
We
Usher.
just played with you.
All of these cats, and there's a lot more that came through Rutgers, and I had no idea when I got there. It's like, again, I was in the thick of it, just trying to get through school. But again, like you, I would just venture into New York. And by the time I graduated, I was fortunate enough to be on the road with Ray Anderson touring, and that got me to New York. And then that Rutgers connection got me through New York with my first set of gigs as well, because all of the relationships that we had built there took on a whole nother light, man. But in the midst of all of this, again, I keep saying your name would come up. Kevin Powell's doing this. He's doing this. He's writing this article. He's doing this show. He's interviewing these great people. He put out a new book. And it just seems like you just had one project after the next dropping. And then to my surprise, you contact me one day, say, "Hey, brother, I want to go in the studio with you. I want to do this project."
I was a little ambitious in my life.
No, but it was great, man, because we had strings, we had the band, we put all of this stuff together. It was always a pleasure working with you and your team, man. And fast forward, you just did another project and Grammy nominated. Tell us about that.
It's funny. So if I can go back to the 90s for a second, I was very torn, because the journalism was paying the bills. You know how it goes, Dion. The bills get paid. But I moved to New York actually to be a poet and a playwright. Plays have never gotten produced. I have scripts that I'm sitting on. I was very active in the poetry scene. And then I made a pivotal decision midway through the 90s, after my Vibe career was over, those years were over. I was like, either I'm going to be a speaker, out there, or I'm going to do poetry with music. And I chickened out, to be honest about it. I got scared. Because again, not only did I come up listening to the Last Poets, but back to the Caribbean influences, Linton Kwesi Johnson and all the dub poets. You know what I mean? It's like that all had a big impact on me. And I just Muta Baruka. Remember Muta Baruka? Oh my God!
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm
the
saying?
New York Composers Cafe, all of the stuff happening down there. Yeah.
Yes, and but I got scared. So instead of doing it myself with poetry and music, which is what I really wanted to do, I just started representing singers, and that's how we connected. Because I was concerned about the direction of music in this country, and I was like, not like I was some savior, but I was like, man, maybe if I get on the management side of this thing and help artists that are coming along. We work with Valencia, work with Shannon Holt. You remember the artists we worked with? We did a couple of things, but I just I realized that I didn't really have the heart for managing. Like I was like, I love music, but I just want to be a fan. I just want to be a fan. You know what I mean? And so, fast forward all these years later, I was working. My mother got sick a few years back, and I started going to the grocery store with her to help her in my hometown of Jersey City. And I just started posting about it on social media. I wasn't even thinking anything about it other than like, I'm an only child. I don't have any siblings. It's just my mom. I didn't really know my father at all. He's not even alive anymore. But it turned into a poetry collection. And then I decided, Kev, man, you've always wanted to do poetry with music. What are you waiting for? Mary Baraka's done it. Langston Hughes has done it. Sonia Sanchez has done it. And we did it, and we got nominated for a Grammy. And I was in shock. And, one of the first tracks that I thought about was a track that you helped to produce, that you have the credit on the album. It was originally called Manny. We turned it into For You, and we had to, and our late brother Padmore, the great violinist, is on that. Ron Blake is on it. Ron Jackson's on it. Of course, you anchor it, and I just was like, I want to make music that speaks to me, and it was incredible, man. I did not expect to get nominated for a Grammy. It happened, and we went to the Grammys, which was wild, and Joni Mitchell was there, who I love, and Stevie Wonder was there, and Tracy Chapman showed up, which was like, wow. But it put a battery in my back, Dion, that this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like, I want to make movies, and I want to make poetry with music. This is what I want to do, and I think too, because we've seen so many of our peers who have not made it out of their 40s and 50s. I think about Roy Hargrove, my friend Radcliffe Bailey, the great visual artist. He just died 2 years ago. I'm like, man, we better take advantage of the time we have, no matter how long or short it is, and do the things that we love. That's what I felt when I saw you guys last week. Like, man, you always have loved what you do. And I mean, you're one of the people that I point to, like Dion is doing what he loves, you know what I mean? But there was another level of just ecstasy as I was watching you perform. It was particularly a moment. The whole band is incredible. I mean, and I know the whole band by name, but when you and Alioun and Victor were going back and forth, the three of you in the percussion session, I was like, that's what I want to do with my poetry for the rest of life. I want to feel that kind of euphoria when I write poetry and when I play with music. And so that's how we got the Grammy nomination. Now we're working on our second album, which is absolutely crazy.
Well, that's, man, beautiful story, man. Beautiful story. And one of the things I've always admired with you, like you, I grew up with a single mom. I grew up with two sisters. But my mom had 3 other kids before she, met my father and had us. So I have 5 sisters by my mother's side.
That's right.
So we've always kind of had that conversation, growing up with a single mom. And, one of the things my mother told my sisters and I when we were young, she's like, guys, as far as education is concerned, it was limited, for her. But she's like, I want you guys to go to college. I don't know how we're going to figure it out, but you're going to go to college. But my biggest advice to you is to do the thing you love. Because you're going to have to do it for the rest of your life. She said, I go to my first job, I finish that, I go to my second job, and on the weekends, I go to my third job to keep a roof over our head. I do it because I love you guys. I don't love my job. I love you guys, and I want to make sure that I can take care of you guys. So she's like, do me a favor, find a thing in life you love and be good at it.
That's right.
I was like 10 years old when she told us that. And that's when I decided, man, the one thing that I knew I got out of bed for was music. It made me feel good. If I was having a bad day, if I was having a horrible day, I got a failing grade, I would just go in the band room and just get on the drums and I would walk off feeling just feeling, fulfilled.
It's God bless your mother, man. My mother definitely pushed me. She always would say, like I said earlier, I think my mom only had an 8th grade education, formally, but she also pushed me around education. She took me to the library when I was 8 years old. She made sure I appreciated reading, and I really believe that's how I became a writer. But honestly, Dion, it was watching people like you in the 90s and 2000s, because I didn't readily embrace the word artist. Like now I'm like, yes, I'm an artist. I'm an artist.
Right. Yeah.
I know I'm a journalist too, but I'm like, nope, I'm an artist first because that's my spirit. But, I didn't know that you could actually call yourself an artist, and it's really something like, and I know this is your life. Is what I also love about what you do is that you teach it. And art, man, is so it has saved my life. Art has saved not just the writing, the music of people like yourself, going to theater, dance, movies, no matter what the art form is. It could be cooking, it could be sewing. It's just like that whole spirit of creating. And it's something that at the show the other day when y'all played the traditional song, the traditional music of the Virgin Islands, and you talked about how the folks just took whatever they had and they made music out of it. That's man, that common thread. I've seen that throughout the West Indies. I've seen that in Africa. I've seen that down south in this country. Yeah. I've seen it in Ireland. I've seen it, in parts of England and France. I mean, it's like, the people making art out of whatever they have. And I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. And it's life-saving when you can do that and create something that's so amazing. And what I've gotten from y'all, what I left out earlier, I would come see you and other folks regularly because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn, what y'all do and like, how do you do it? And because it inspires me as a writer in my art form. And not only would I go to Lennox Lounge. Remember Lennox Lounge in Harlem? Club. I would go to Showman's Cafe. Yeah. I would go to all these little jazz clubs, man. I would go to Baker's Keyboard Lounge in Detroit, Yoshi's in the Bay Area. I would go anywhere there was jazz because it was the jazz. Y'all were just the coolest cats to me. Everybody thinks it was hip hop. I'm like, there's no hip hop without jazz.
A lot of people don't realize the evolution of it because, once they took the arts, I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, they took music and art out of the public schools in New York. Right. Cats had turntables. That was the evolution of a lot of that. And you're talking about the cat that came from Jamaica with the sound system because sound system was big down there. And like, again, you find what you use you have, use the tools you have. There's no music in the schools. There's no instruments. Cat's going to find a way to be creative. And, the one thing that we have as a band, the 21st Century Band, I mean, coming from the Virgin Islands, I remember having a conversation with Ruben and Ron and, even Rashawn and like, hey, we're here in New York. We've made it on a certain level. as part of the scene. We're part of the jazz scene, but we have a culture that we don't even explore. So it would be to our best interest. I don't know. And I told him, I don't know how it's going to be embraced, but it'll be to our best interest to try to create upon that. And that's how the 21st Century Band came about. It was a platform to present our Caribbean cultural heritage in a jazz platform. And it was very, very unique. And I had that conversation with Branford Marcellus, with Wynton Marcellus about the music and what we was, how we were trying to figure out. And they both encouraged us, like, man, go for it, man. It's like the one thing they're like, coming from New Orleans, we know what our cultural heritage is. Louis Armstrong, the second line, all of that stuff. He's like, you guys got something that nobody knows. The world doesn't know. I mean, the world doesn't know. That's why on my shows, when I talk about Caribbean music and I talk about Bob Marley, I always mention college, because everybody got introduced to Bob Marley in college. That's right. But and it kind of stopped there. You know a couple of the calypso songs, Feeling Hot, 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 and all of that. But as far as the other indigenous, music from the Caribbean, is really Latin jazz. That's what people think Caribbean jazz is. But you have calypso, reggae, mento, soca, zouk from the French islands. You got zouk, you got Quailbe from the Virgin Islands, and then you have all of the Brazilian rhythms. The various forms of bossa nova and samba. A lot of that is not being brought into the jazz, on the not sophisticated level. And that's kind of what we try to do. And it comes with a different level of education. And that's one of the things that all of us in the band, and I think that's what you heard, we all challenge each other to get as educated as we can musically, to know the theory and the language of jazz, and then take that to our culture. And how do we take a soca song and make it sophisticated? And how do we take a jazz song and put yardie vibe on it? That's right. Yeah. So
even the titles, like when your first song, I think the other night, the set it was called The Swag, I believe.
Swag, yeah.
I mean, I was like, this is cultural exchange happening. This is beautiful, man. With the language, everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Wow. And the Swag came, I was writing new songs from last December for this run at Dizzy's. I had like 4 songs that I couldn't finish. I mean, I just got stuck. And then I would write one song and get stuck, then start another song and get stuck. And I was on the 4th song. And one night, about 3 weeks ago, I was home wrapping up the end of the school semester, dealing with exams. And I'm sitting behind the piano. I was like, man, I'm so frustrated. We're going into Dizzy's in 3 weeks. I can't finish these songs, man. And I started calling the cats. I'm like, I hope you all got some music. And Victor, I got so I said, okay, cool, because you always want to bring something new. And then I just started playing on the piano, and this song literally the whole song came to me in 2 hours.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, here I am working on for 6 months these 4 songs. I can't finish them. And that Swag just came to me. That. It just happens like that. And when I brought it to the band, it's the first straight ahead song we've ever played. Because everything else is Caribbean based. And this was just straight up, boom, straight up, straight ahead. And everybody looked around and said, yeah, this is the vibe. It worked. It worked for our sound,
I loved it.
Yeah. It's like 20, 25, 26 years.
Wow.
The band has been together.
You guys literally have grown up together, which is incredible. Which is incredible. You are brothers. Truly brothers. Wow.
And one of the things that I strive with the band and the same personnel, I've worked so hard to keep the same personnel, because we don't have bands existing out here.
Yeah.
We really don't. When we first came to New York, there were bands. You had Taylor's Whalers, you had Max Roach had his band, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, the Miles Davis was still alive. The cats had bands, and when you went to hear someone, these people were playing with them.
That's right.
That was the band, and you saw somebody that played with Art Blakey, and then it's like you see them somewhere else, but they still have that Art Blakey. They still were part of that. They carry that tradition with them.
Yeah.
You go to hear somebody play. It's like I asked her, who you playing with? I'm playing with this guy tonight. Well, who's in the band? I don't know. I'm just gonna make the gig. There's no bands anymore, and it's kind of like a family structure as well too.
It is.
If you want to keep your house in order, you got to work hard on maintaining those relationships, and that's what we've done.
You know, it's funny you say that because remember I said at the beginning of the show, your show, that I used to read the credits. I love the history. So what I decided I was going to do was immerse myself in the history of the music. And I would
Yeah.
see that people played with Duke for 40, 30, 40
Right.
years, what you're
Yeah.
talking about. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And even with Quincy Jones, I noticed as he moved from jazz to popular music, including Michael Jackson, there was always a crew of musicians that he always called upon to work with. And I mean, you know, it is a family, it is a community, and people don't understand that. And, you know, one reason why I love gravitate toward y'all, because as you know, being a writer is a very solitary art form.
So is being a musician.
It is.
You gotta spend a lot of time by yourself.
Yeah.
Figuring it out before you go and communicate with other folks. You gotta have your act together. Like on the day that I was in the studio this morning recording with Wycliffe Gordon, I got up at 6 this morning. Wow. And I went into the shed because I needed to be in the studio at a certain time. I needed to be ready that early in the morning. I got up at 6 this morning to shed because my wife was like, "What time you want to be up?" I said, I need at least 2 hours of practicing before I go in there. Where you have to work on yourself. That's part of what we do. You have to put that time in.
That's a great point. You know, it's funny. You know, you asked me about the impact. I actually write to music most of the time, generally jazz or classical music. I have become a big lover of classical music. Kind of came back from my childhood. Even though I didn't learn how to play instruments when I was a kid, I was lucky enough to go to a middle school where the arts was really emphasized a lot. So we were listening to popular music, listening to classical music. And now I realized we were also listening to Billie Holiday and other jazz folks. I just didn't know who they were.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I listen to a lot of jazz music. It helps me to write. I definitely, you know, I'm a lifelong hip hop head. I will admit it, but I cannot listen to the boom bap as I try to write. It doesn't work. There's something about jazz that, like, when we were there, man, I looked at my wife a few times. She was in heaven when y'all were playing Friday night, man. It was just like, because it was heavenly. Yeah. Like jazz touches the soul. And I need to say this as we were talking about the diasporic influences, you know, like, yeah, you made me, as you were talking, I was thinking about, yeah, Dizzy would do things and Quincy did things, but it's so important that people who are actually from the U.S. Virgin Islands or Jamaica or Barbados or Trinidad, you know, to play this music called jazz and put your own interpretation on it, just like we would put our own interpretation on what was coming out of that part of the world. It's important. I'm happy that y'all are doing it. I find it thrilling, and I think it gives another dimension to jazz music, quite frankly, what you're doing.
Oh yeah, and that's the conversation I had with Winton, and he said it. He said, "Man, do what you're doing," because he said the Caribbean is one of the few uncharted, musically on that level, that sophisticated level. You know, so he's like, thank you for doing what you're doing, man. It's really interesting. One of our listeners has a comment, say having a lot of island rhythms found its way to the UK and is flourishing that year. They have, because of the Caribbean influence, Afro-Caribbean influence. There's a lot of Jamaicans living in England and other parts of the world. One of the things that really changed my thinking musically, 1998, when we first put the band together and recorded. I remember it was December 18. We went into the studio, and then Christmas Eve I went to Senegal with Ernest Ranglin to record a record with Papa Mal with his band. And I was the only American, full American, Caribbean American. Ira Coleman was European American. It was Ira Coleman and bass, myself on drums, and Ernest Ranglin, Jamaican. The rest of the band was from Senegal. We did the record. This was the first time these guys from Senegal had ever played with any American musician. And I was setting up the drums, and you know, they had all of the Sabah drummers, a whole family of drummers lined up. It was like maybe about 8 of them, and we were just all in the studio, and they were playing their stuff and everything. And Ernest Wrangler said to me, he could call me Papa. He said, "Papa, our rhythm they lick up over there, so go check it out." So I go to the drummers, and they're playing, and I pull out my manuscript paper, and I started to write it. They're like, "Oh, American, he right. You know, they started laughing at me. So I went over to Ernest, and I said, "This is what they're playing. You know, he's playing this, he's playing that." And Ernest just sat there, plucked out something, wrote something, and said, "Let's play this."
Wow.
He gave Ira a chart, gave me a chart, and he's like, and he told, and Ira was the translator. He spoke French. He said, "When we get to this part, point to them and tell them play that same rhythm." And we started playing, and they played their thing, and I played what they played. It's the Sabah box stuff.
I love it.
And they were like, man, when we stopped, they was like, how you know that? You know, and I was like, well, you know, there's like no American drummer can play with us. And I was like, well, I'm from the Caribbean. And I like connected things on a whole nother way. I'm saying this to say, as we traveled on tour the next year for like the next 2 years, we traveled all through Europe. Everywhere we went, they found some Senegalese people and musicians to come out. I mean, we were in the Alps in Switzerland. There were Senegalese people there hanging out.
I love it.
Supporting the music. And it showed me how far, you know, the span of the music, you know, have reached worldwide.
That's right.
I also learned, more importantly on that trip, the depth of the foundation of the music coming from Senegal. Because I heard every form of American pop music, every form of Latin music, every form of Haitian music, every form of reggae that I heard in Senegal. I heard all of it in Senegal. And the guy said, yeah, this is the roots of everything. And then as this, you know, the folks were sent off in different directions, stuff got dispersed in a certain way. And that's how I ended up having Ali in the band.
Wow.
Because it became a teaching moment for me. And he started teaching me Sabah. And I learned a lot of that stuff. You know, I don't play it on the gigs, but from a knowledge standpoint, that's how I'm able to relate to him musically, because I had to study with him.
It was, you know, I want to come back to it for a second, Dion. When I was watching you and Alio and Victor, that the three of you as the percussion section of the band, let's call it, it was like y'all were speaking this interior language that was so beautiful. And I was like, this is the music. This is our music. You know, someone is asking, hey, Ezra Thomas, are there young artists today who you think is the next wave of jazz? I think young, older, it doesn't matter. I think that you should download everything the 21st Century Band, Dion Parson 21st Century Band has ever done. Go to YouTube and watch their performances because it's incredible. You know, and Dion, you know, you're such a humble person. You know, you were one of the first people I called when I decided to make the last album that got nominated for a Grammy. You were busy, but your humility said, you know, there's this young man that I'm mentoring, that I've worked with named Joshua Farrell, you know, who's a drummer, and he ended up playing on a couple of the tracks. And so Josh Farrell, Gifton Jellin, who's Haitian but grew up in the Bahamas, back to the Caribbean connection. Josh is from the VI. You know, Gifton is Haitian and Bahamian. There's Terrence Martin, there's Kamasi Washington. But you know, I want people to see what I've seen, which is like, you know, let's honor Dion, honor these folks that are here, man, that have been putting it down for a long time. You know, you guys are incredible. And I just think that you literally are creating what is world music to me in these times. That's what's beautiful about it. And I got to say this, Dion, I know it's your show, but Gory, and I came home, oh my God, where are my CDs at? I was like, my CDs are in storage. You know, so I was texting you, I need to hear this record again. Gory is one of the most incredible tracks I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. I was mesmerized listening to it, Dion. That record made me feel like how I feel when I see Alvin Ailey's Revelations. It's how I feel when I hear Langston Hughes' best poetry. It's how I feel every time I hear an interpretation, including yours, of Redemption Song the other night. It's like, this is speaking to my spirit. I felt the answer. You know, people talk about what is diasporic music? What does it mean to me? It transports you. It takes you on a journey that you couldn't even imagine. And that's what I felt. And that's the best of our music worldwide. If I didn't come to Caribbean music, I would have never discovered music of, Cesaria out of Cape Verde or Fela out of Nigeria. You know, it was because of Caribbean music that opened me up to everything else. Right. You know, to your point, I just need to say that. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And, you know, I appreciate it. I'll leave it as that, man. The show is about Kevin Powell, and I want to get back to that because you shared your music with us. About with the music for your Grammy-nominated project, and again, I wasn't able to make that track, make the recording and be part of it on that level, but I recommended some folks who you were happy with, and it worked out. But you shared some music with us, and I want our audience to hear your music and hear some of the spoken words and the poetry and the things you're doing. Even though you don't consider yourself a musician, I think you've done an amazing job doing when your heart is right and you're doing the right thing, it's gonna be fruitful. That's what I'm saying.
Wow,
So
thank you.
I really want our audience to hear. So the first song you shared with us is a song entitled "A Love Sonnet."
For my
So
wife. My wife.
yes. Let's check this out. Let's check out "A Love Sonnet."
Got to be there, got to be there, got to be there, got to. I've waited a life for a love like yours, and when we die, I'll love you even more. Got to be there, got to be there, got to be there, got to be there.
Yeah, love, a love sonnet. I've waited a life for a love like yours. It appeared as a red moon from the south. I feel warm fingers orbiting my pores. I taste joy at the corners of your mouth. I did not know that I was mad hungry, that I was this starved for a simple touch. My love, I must enjoy this reverie. From bone to skin, I adore you so much. I've waited a life for a love like yours. When we die, I'll love you even more. That's why I gotta be there. That's why I gotta be there. That's why I gotta be there. I'll love you even more. Yeah. Our legs interlace like rope when we rest. Hearts race each other like African drums. I've laid burdens upon the sun's bare chest. I've blown the tops off mountains with your lungs. Together, we jump the broom's tulip floor. And when we die, I'll love you even more. Together, we jump the broom's tulip floor. And when we die, I'll love you even more. Yo, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life. You're my best friend. You're my partner. You're the love of my life. I love you. I'm in love with you. In the here and now and for eternity. This is what love is. Gotta be there. I'm there for you. You're there for me.
We met because of books, Kay. Yeah, books. We have a mutual love of books. Isn't that beautiful? Books.
Got to be there, got to be there, got to be there, got to. I've waited a life for a love like yours, and when we die, I'll love you even more. Got to be there, got to be there, got to be there, got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Love. I love sonnet.
One of the most beautiful love songs I've ever heard. There you go.
I'm so embarrassed. I didn't know y'all gonna play the video.
Remind me of poetry I heard in the village in the 60s. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Listen.
Are you blushing, bro? Are you blushing?
And back to the Caribbean connection. DJ Rasta Root, aka Dion Liverpool, Trinidadian, who grew up in Canada and has been in ATL for many years, and actually he ended up becoming a producer and manager of the late great Fife of Tribe Called Quest, also Trini roots, you know what I'm saying? And he sent me this raw track, and it sampled Michael Jackson's Got to Be There. I don't normally do samples. Like we don't normally do, but I was like, you know what, we got to do something with this, and so we ended up just having this sister. What was he calling the sister singers? My wife is classically trained, by the way, as a singer.
Okay.
And she actually also played piano and clarinet. She went to Performing Arts High School in San Diego, and she reads music. She could it's in her muscle memory.
Right.
And so, you know, she and Tynesha, I have to shout out Tynesha Hill. Tynesha produced that first album that got nominated for a Grammy. As you know, very rare that women get the opportunity to produce albums. I want to shout out your wife, Nicole, who's amazing and has been holding it down for many years in this industry, you know, who's a beautiful human being as well. And just shout out to women who make things happen like them, man. I need to say that. But I, you know, Dion, I think we need to we need love songs. We need love songs. We need love songs. I miss love songs, you know. And I think it's important. That's why. And my next album, I can announce. I haven't said it publicly, but can I say it here? The next album is actually going to be called "A Poem for Evangeline and Other Songs." It's not all love songs, but there are 3 or 4 love songs on it because, man, I grew up with Smokey Robinson, the Bee Gees, the Temptations. You know, I mean, Bob Marley made love songs, for Christ's sakes. We can make love songs, y'all. He wasn't all political. It wasn't all just political. Bob had love songs. You know what I'm saying? And I just think we need love songs. You know, so
I totally agree, man. It's one of the things we all deal with. I mean, you stayed for the first set, but the second set, you know, Vic had a song called "Song for Shell" for his wife.
Oh, wow!
Beautiful ballad.
I want to hear that.
And it started off with a drum thing with Aliyun and I was playing Malice really soft, and it ended with that. And when he hit me up, he said, "I got a song for this, man. I would love for you to play the song for my wife." He said, "But I want you and Aliyun to do something up front and in the back." So we brought this nice. I'm gonna send you some of it.
I want to hear that.
It's great stuff, man. But you know, again, you're saying you're not a musician and you're not musically trained, but the fact that you are creative and you're surrounded by musicians, you have a team in place that actually can put stuff together on this level with your guidance says a lot, you know, because you're a true leader based on all of the all of the experiences you have and the work you've done and what you've accomplished. I've worked with you. You know how to put a team together. You know how to direct. And if you don't know something specifically, at least you know what you want. So when you hear, that's what I want. So that's right there is the beginning of greatness, man. So for me, man, this is great, man. But that was your first song you shared with us, a love sonnet, and then you shared another song entitled "For You." So let's check this out.
Another love song.
There you go.
I'm putting my sunglasses on for this one.
For you.
I could stare at you all day. Even in pitch blackness, you are a beautiful genius. I draw you with the soft fingers around my heart. We make funny faces with our bare feet. Laughter is the lotion we put on our bones after the shower. Our eyes make love like 2 birds twirling in a field of passion. Never met anyone like you in my life. I am both excited and terrified. Excited because we have been here before, perhaps in post-war Paris or the Harlem Renaissance. 2 lovers swaying to jazz and French kissing history while reading Zora and Langston to each other.
My love.
Terrified because we are the children of families long abused and traumatized. We don't want to be married to destruction. We want to be free to write love poems with our bath water. We want to be free to burn and sage the past with our tears. This is what we dream as our words hug tight each other inside the belly of our imagination. You are a beautiful genius. That's you. That is you.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
That was co-produced and lead arranger was Dion Parson on that track from Dion. That track was always so beautiful to me. I was like, man, we need to do this track over with something. And thank you for agreeing to, let us do that. Cause I love that track, man. And I have vivid memories of you and Blake and Padmore and Ron Jackson. It was in Carlton. Shout out to Carlton. Always Brother Carlton on piano. You know what I mean? I mean, you literally brought your whole band to that track, and we did every track we did. We did a few things live in the studio, from what I remember.
Yeah, a lot of stuff was live, man, and it was great. I remember, one of the things that as you brought this up, man. Remember we did the show at Joe's Pub, and Dougie Fresh came.
Yes,
where he had his like rap battle.
That's right. Yeah. And you guys did it. And do you remember that you guys did an interpretation of Jimi Hendrix's "Hey Joe" that was so.
Hey Joe, yeah, and we did.
I gotta find the video and send it to you. I have to find the video and send it to you. That's your interpretation of "Hey Joe" was bananas.
Yeah, and we did a Little Drummer Boy also.
Yes.
You gotta revisit that because that's some good stuff.
Yeah, man. It's interesting because one of the reasons why I called you early on, way back in the day, because I remember stumbling into the fact that the Funk Brothers from Motown were all jazz musicians.
Yep.
I was like, word, they were jazz musicians, but they could play anything. You guys can play anything.
Yeah.
You guys can play anything. You have the foundation.
Yeah.
Wow.
That movie, man, a friend of mine gave me years ago. Again, they came to my show and it's like, man, you remind me, I just saw this movie called Standing in the Shadows of Motown.
Yes.
And it was about the Funk Brothers, and it's a similar thing. And that's kind of what we did with you.
That's exactly it. it. I know you're busy, but we're on, man, I need you on the next album. At least one song. Just one song.
We'll work it out, man. I'm in town all summer. I'm in the city all summer.
Let's do it, man.
So we'll make it happen, man. But
I ain't gonna lie. When I was watching the other night, I was taking mental notes. Like, man, okay, for this track and this track, Dion over here, Dion here.
Oh, man, that's great, man. At least I got a gig with you. I'll have a gig with you. So it's great, man. Beautiful. Man.
What's the name of the name of the music from the Virgin Islands that you played? Say the name of it again.
Quail Bay Music.
Quail Bay Music.
Quelbe. Quail Bay Music. That's what it's called.
Wow.
Yeah, it's some deep stuff. I'll send you some tracks. I'll send you some tracks of some stuff that's really. It's really unique. And what I found out in my research, digging into it, it's really it's like parallel to hillbilly music. Because it's used as a similar banjo and all of that, and is really the dance. So along with the music comes the dance, quadrille dancing, which is Danish influence.
You said Danish.
is Danish influence. Yeah,
Wow.
quadrille. I grew up dancing quadrille, and we learned that in elementary school. So you would be dressed in the Caribbean madras, and the girls in the dresses, and the guys in the pants and the shirts, and we learned to sidestep and do the waltz and all of the stuff. And then we would dance the maypole. So there was a pole with ribbons coming around. We learned how to dance to braid the pole and stuff. It was a whole cultural thing that it still exists, but it's not the same. But the music went along with that,
Wow.
It was and that's what I'm saying. It's really deep. It's really deep.
I'm gonna be doing some research because I always go down the rabbit hole when I learn new things about music from anywhere in the world. And
so you can see what is Quail Bay music. That's what it's.
Yes, there it is. Okay, now I can spell it. Got it.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Quail Bay music. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the song Quail Bay song is that's our 21st Century. The song that we have also is the first one I wrote, paying homage to our Quail Bay music, and then I wrote the Quail Bay song. So, but I'll send you some stuff.
If you ever decide that you want some words to gory, holla at your boy. And I hope that y'all do a live album again soon, man, because man, like that.
Yeah. The last album we did was 2019. It's time for another one. That's what we're working on. Yeah, we're working on that.
I'll sweep the floor at the show for you, whatever you need, brother.
It's all good,
man. And you know, my wife's a photographer. Whatever you need, brother, we got you. She shot the cover of my Grammy-nominated album. Not only did she sing on it, she shot the album cover photo as well.
Nice. Well, we got work to do, so we're gonna be talking offline about some projects. But we got one more song that you shared that I would love for audience to check out before we let you go. Our goes fast, man. But thank you, bro.
Oh, wow.
You shared so much information, man. But let's play this song. It's called, and this is very dear to me because Malcolm is my man. When I Found Malcolm X.
Ron Blake is on it, and every album that I do will have at least one Caribbean influence record. Every one of them.
Great. We love to hear that, man. So let's check this out. When I Found Malcolm X.
I Brooklyn, Jersey boy. Big up. Me give thanks to Jah Rastafari, everlasting, ever faithful, ever sure. Yeah, man, me feeling irie. Enough respect to dreads everywhere, worldwide. Jesus for Malcolm X, my hero. When I found Malcolm X. Follow me now. I shed tears the way a dam bursts wide open when exposed by an awful hurricane. That moment at age 18, after the first time I hungrily ate the words of the autobiography of Malcolm X. Because I did not know a black man like him could even exist. I cried hard, because they had thrown an arrow bullet after bullet into Malcolm. The way hunters murder a defenseless lion or deer. He was both a lion and a deer. A lion undaunted by America's naked jungles. A deer forever thirsty about what is underneath the there they bamboozled us into believing was freedom. I howled like an unwanted ghetto baby, dumped into the trash bag of history, because in his book, I was able to hold and hug my own face for the very first time. A black boy ruthlessly damaged by abuse, hate, self-hate, mental illness, racism, and that violence we call poverty. I wailed as we had wailed at those bluer than blue church revivals, as the preacher man, like Malcolm's daddy, the preacher man, made us believe there was a heaven for the holes of black folks. When I found Malcolm X, I said when I found Malcolm X, Malcolm saved my life. Malcolm X, the father, I wish I had Malcolm. I went to school like Malcolm, was the Negro mascot like Malcolm, made unsafe love to the streets like Malcolm, was the prison waiting for myself like Malcolm. I was there when he was reborn, once more and once more. I set that book down and rolled and smoked his speeches the way I've been smoking this joint called life since my father told my mother he ain't my son when I was 8 years old. I puked fresh buckets of Irish soap and muddy waters because in this dead black man I had found God, the Holy Ghost, and the Father I knew would never forsake me. Malcolm gave me what I was missing. He instructed me to posterize myself to be nothing but a man with a stainless steel backbone and legs locked into place like Jesus's on that march to that cross.
When I found my love, I finally found myself. Damn it, bamboozled my heart to the number that baby had. I believe sticking and I feel it all on my mind. When I found Malcolm, something inside. Ooh. When I found Malcolm. Ooh. Oh, when I found Malcolm. Ooh. When I found Malcolm. Ooh. Oh, when I found Malcolm.
Yes, sir. When I found Malcolm.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
few knew that Roots, Alex Haley collaborated on Malcolm X biography. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scratch Band. Was Scratch Band part of Quill? Yes, Scratch Band is part of Quill Bay. Yes.
I just found Stanley and the 10 Sleepless Nights.
Yes.
Wow.
That's the oldest group in the Virgin Islands, the traditional burials. They just lost their banjo player, Edgy. He just passed away last week.
Oh, rest in peace. My God.
Yeah, Stanley. And you know, it's funny, man. We started during the pandemic, 2020. I started documenting Stanley because at the University of the Virgin Islands, where I'm the chair of the Communication and Performing Arts Department.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. We got a grant to create. We had a Quill Bay class on the books, but this is a Quill Bay interactive class. So
wow.
I did 3 presentations with Stanley. I did a roundtable presentation on the history of Quill Bay, the evolution of Quill Bay, with Dr. Lawson and Stanley and Dr. Trotman. And then we went into the studio and I documented. I was able to videotape each instrument playing individually. Wow. And then they put it all together and played one song in the studio for me. So when we teach the class, we have documentations of just the triangle player, the banjo player, the drummer, the different grooves. And then they did a live concert for us, which we have on video. So the interactive class, when we do bring it on, you know, by the end of the class, the students will be able to write their own Quill Bay song.
This is so important, like you said, because you listed things earlier that was so important. You talked about musical influences from different parts of the West Indies, and people need to understand that, especially Americans, that the West Indies is not just Jamaica and reggae. It's so vast. It's so
and that's the whole concept behind the 21st Century Band. And that's the conversation I was having with Winton and even Bramford, who produced our first live CD from Lincoln Center, talking about the indigenous music coming from the Caribbean and the influence. Now, the
Mm.
influence is heavily African, but like in Quail music, it's heavily European as well. Because of the instrumentation. Now, the banjo came out of Africa, but the way it was being presented, like hillbilly, but and there's the strumming, that's what's happening in the Caribbean on a whole nother level that people don't realize. And that's from a Europe. The way it's being played is from a European instrument, because Africans don't play the banjo like like that, But the guitar, the string instrument, the quattro, the halam, all of those instruments was actually, they evolve out of Africa. So there's a combination, and what people don't realize is not only was music influence being brought to America, but music influence was being brought from Europe as well. That's what happened in New Orleans with the opera houses and the the blacks being in the street hearing the music coming out of the opera houses from the white opera musicians, and they imitating that, and then the influx of the marching band during the military times. The first set of entertainment was military marching bands. That evolved into the social clubs and the Elks clubs and all of that, and that's how a lot of the music developed out of. I'm kind of like putting it all together. It's more detailed than that, but there's a lot of influences that we have to attribute to. But coming out of the Caribbean, in the Virgin Islands, Quail Bay is our indigenous music, just like reggae it is in Jamaica. But just if you're in Hispaniola, the island of Hispaniola, which is half Dominican Republic, which is merengue and salsa, the other half is Haiti, which is you have the whole Yoruba, religious stuff, but then you have zouk, forms of zouk, but because of the influence of the French. But then you go down to the Saint Martin, Martinique, and those other French islands where zouk is more prominent down there.
That's right.
And then you got Cuba with their stuff. So it's there's so many influxes of rhythms. It's the same rhythm can be played on different islands with a different name and a different feel.
That's right.
That's that's kind of what we've been doing is putting that mixture together and working with some stuff. In a couple of the past shows, I've had Obed Calvert and Godwin Louis, who are Haitian musicians, and they brought a whole nother element of Haitian music to the table that I was unaware of. And they took, just specific Haitian grooves to a whole nother level of music.
Wow.
And so it's really deep. And that's what, Winter mentioned. She's like, man, the Caribbean is one of the last uncharted territory, and it's up to us to kind of bring it forward the right way. Bring it forward the right way, and that's why the education is really prominent in what we're doing, man. So, but hey, we could go on and on about that. But you got the Quail-based stuff. We're going to talk some more about that. But Kevin, thank you so much.
I just thank you to Mel, thank you to Isabella, thank you to your wonderful wife and partner in every way, Nicole, and just in the 21st Century Band. And Dion, let me say this: the world is in a deep place, but if we could just have conversations like we're having right now, what we've just had for the last hour, and some change, and understand how we all actually overlap with each other, how we all touch each other in different ways, no matter who we are. Imagine where we can go as a human race, man. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. I agree. So that's why these conversations are important to me. Moving back to the Virgin Islands, I kind of got out of the scene in New York, but this helps me to reconnect with my friends and people that I admire and respect, and mentors and colleagues. So this for me is a pleasure for me to have you on as our past guest, and the influence that you bring, and your wife and your producer, the folks that have helped you with your projects, and everyone. I saw Ari Raskin's name up there in the credits, and I haven't seen his name in a long time, and so many people. But this is not the last time we're going to talk. I'm around, so we will definitely get together, break some bread, and
I want to come back when the album comes out in about 6 months, because this is one of the best interviews I've ever done. Thank you for having me.
Great,
I mean that. I wouldn't just say it if I didn't mean it.
And before you leave, you know, let our audience know how they can follow you. I think you're doing a presentation. You have the documentary you're presenting on.
I just directed my first film. It's called When We Free the World. Just if anywhere on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Poet Kevin Powell. You can just follow Poet Kevin Powell. LinkedIn, even you just type in Poet Kevin Powell, it'll pop up, and it'll have where we're showing the film around the country. We hope to bring it to the Virgin Islands. You know, we're gonna be touring. Actually, we will be touring the West Indies with the film and Europe. We're planning on bringing it to Japan, and we're definitely gonna be bringing it to Africa as well. So we're gonna be going in different places, and it's a whole nother experience, man. Like I said, I wanted to do a poetry album. I've done it, and I wanted to direct a film. It was hard, but I did it, and it has, you know, I'm just, you know, the arts, Dion. It's the arts. Do the arts in any way. The arts, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you, Kevin, for taking the time out of your busy schedule for being here and sharing the many accomplishments. We didn't even talk about your 16 books. I have all these notes here. We didn't talk about you running for Congress and all
the music was the most important thing.
Yeah,
I mean, not my music, us talking about music. I love that.
The common denominator, but you have so many hats, man, that you wear. You know, every time I see you with a different hat, I'll say, "So which Kevin am I talking to today?"
The music level tonight. The music
level.
Oh
man, it's great, man. But brother, it's been an honor, man. Thank you very much, and continued success to you and your beautiful bride, Evangeline, and all the folks on your team that you're working with, man.
Thank you.
Continued success, man.
Thank you, Dion. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care. Bye. That was my good friend Kevin Powell, man. As you could tell, it's a different show tonight, but I had to do this, man. I had to bring him to the table to share his story and all the great things he's doing. So come back next week and join us as I bring my Gemini brother to the table, to the show, the one and only Mr. Lee Hogan, as he shares his musical journey with us. All right. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week. Take care.